Angels. We all have them. They're our unseen guides, our companions, our teachers, and they're all around us. Sometimes they make themselves known in the most miraculous ways. Join me, Level 3 QHHT practitioner, angel communicator, and Reiki master, Christy Clemens Hoffman, with stories from real people who have experienced uplifting phenomena and real-life angel encounters. Hello and welcome back to Real Life Angel Encounters, the podcast. We've got a very special episode for you today with a QHHT client who has a very interesting lifetime to tell about as what seems like to be an angel. Now, you may remember from an earlier episode that there was another QHHT client, this time of mine, who had a lifetime as a guardian angel, and it was absolutely fascinating. And let me just say right now, if you have a story to tell of your own, please send it my way so that you can be on an upcoming episode and hopefully an upcoming book. All right. Well, let's bring Tracy on to tell her story. Hi, Tracy. Thanks for joining me today. I really appreciate it. Now, I understand you're in Maine.
Yes, it's very cold for November right now. Yes.
I'm in Kansas City and it's very cold as well. Well, actually, we're December.
Oh, see it. It's just messed me all up.
I know, this cold weather. No, it's crazy. And you had a QHHT session with my dear friend, Violetta Stoica, who is a fellow level 3 QHHT practitioner. But she was in Sedona living at the time. Now she's since in California, but you took yourself all the way out to Arizona to have a session.
Yes, I did. And it was life altering. It was.
Yeah, QHHT is pretty amazing. Now, what made you want to know about QHHT and want to have a session?
Well, I had a set of guides that the strange thing is they would sit at a table, and apparently in my visions and my communication with spirits, I have furniture. So they were all sitting around at a table, and I wanted to know who they were because I wasn't getting a connection to what their messages were. I felt like I wasn't getting stuff from them. So I was hoping my higher self would come in and help me with that. And I had some other questions I had about my life and where I was headed and that kind of thing.
You know, I should probably jump in here and mention QHHT if I'm just assuming everybody knows what that is. This is Quantum Healing Hypnosis Technique. This is a hypnosis technique developed by Dolores Cannon. And the goal of this hypnosis technique is to get in touch with other lifetimes that could inform and help illuminate some of the issues we're having in the current lifetime, but also a way to touch in with our guides, our higher self, the greater part of us to receive answers and healing and just find out more about what this crazy thing called life is about. So sorry if there are people out there who didn't know what that was. So QHHT is something that is typically a once in a lifetime type of proposition anyway, and it must be done by someone who is trained in the method. There are 3 levels of training, and I am at the level 3, so is Violetta, which is the highest level that you can attain for QHHT. So you went to one of the best for this, and Violetta is absolutely lovely.
Yes, yeah, her energy is amazing. Yes, I agree.
Oh
yes.
My gosh, she's a doll. So you were wanting to get in touch with, basically, it sounds like a council?
Yes, and I even drew a diagram of who they were. I mean, this person sits here, and then it was like I was standing at the table and they were all sitting in front of me. And she says, I've never seen that before. And I said, well, neither have I. And I was frustrated because I wasn't getting messages from them. And I had another hypnosis session a year or so later, and I figured out what they were. And it was really cool. They aren't my guides.
No?
No, it's actually a council that I sit on with these other beings, and they're not humans. And we work towards the safety of the earth. And it's concurrent. And that's why it's happening like right now while I'm in this existence, because we know time isn't linear like we think it is. And I was like, oh, no wonder. It was very clear. No wonder why we hadn't seen, and no wonder why they weren't sharing with me, because my higher self kept saying, you already know. You already know. And I'm like, that's not helpful to me. And that's like, you already know. And I did already know. And I just didn't know. I knew that there was something very unique about that. And that's what it was.
That is so interesting because I hear that a lot in sessions that she already knows. Why are we going over this again? But also that we can have these councils, or I don't know, sometimes I call them brethren, just in terms of soul family, in the terms of like a soul family. We have these other beings that we can be working with while we're having a physical lifetime in 2024 life
Yes.
at the same time. Isn't that crazy?
It is crazy. It's not something I talk with somebody when I go to the grocery store. You know what I mean? It's something that only certain people understand. But it is really kind of cool when I think about it.
Right. And we think of people having double lives, but we don't really think about it in terms of this kind of thing. So, what an interesting concept. Did that answer some questions for you then?
I did. I stopped nagging or saying, "What do you have to tell me?" I let go of that push and I decided to receive. And I said, okay, we'll just work on this together. And you have all of my energy when you need it. And we'll work on this. It's a protection of the earth. And that's what we'll do. So as soon as I stopped struggling and straining against not knowing it, it made a big difference. I just let it flow.
That's just it. I see people just struggling and straining with this kind of thing. But I want to know who's talking to me. I want to know what they want to say. It's like they're telling you with the feelings. And
Yeah,
people are just like struggling. It's like, oh, but what we're doing really is blocking ourselves when we do that.
absolutely. 100%. Didn't know it at the time, but looking back, it's yes.
No, I mean, you can imagine talking to a real live person and they're telling you the rules and regulations, but as they're telling you what's going on, you're going, well, but I wish you would tell me. And you're like, I'm trying to tell you right now.
Yes.
Let's move ahead. These beings, this council. So, what type of beings make up this group?
Well, I know there's a feline alien on there, and I know that there are, I mean, I can describe them. I have a red being who sits cross-legged and has red, but he has symbols all over him. I've got an orange being, and I've got a blue being, and a green being, and they're all from different planets. Like Vega, I was told once, tell me what's my next move to be spiritual. And I had to become a vegan. And I'm like, no, I don't want to become a vegan. I'm not ready for that. And it turns out I had to communicate with somebody from Vega, VEGA. Oh, one of my spirits that I was communicating with. They weren't telling me to stop eating meat. They were telling me that you have a special being that will help you, and he's from Vega. So he's a vegan. You know what I mean? It was so weird.
Oh
It's
my
like, how can
God.
we?
We're telling you. We're telling you. We're literally
I
telling
know.
you right now. Okay, I'm going to look at vegans an entirely new way now, Tracy.
Yeah, I
Right.
know.
You had a feeling being too.
Yes, I did. And I know my guardian angel is Ariel, and Ariel has a cat too, but she's like over on my left shoulder. That's my right shoulder. Sorry, she's on my right shoulder. But the cat feline being was there, and I thought, okay, I keep identifying all these beings, and they're just sitting there at my conference table. And then when I ended up with that other hypnosis, I went through and I met all of them, and they're like, we're so glad you're here. And they guided me through and showed me everything. And it felt like I belonged there as much as I belong here. So it was very opening for me. It's hard to explain.
Yes, very opening for you, just like all the possibilities.
Yes. It's funny. I don't feel special. I feel like that's just a coincidence. That's just a part of I have five fingers. I mean, that's just part of me. It is what it is. And I think, I mean, I'm not any better. I'm not any worse. And neither is anybody else. We're all on this journey and we're all at the level we're supposed to be at. This is it. Where you are is where you're supposed to be.
Gosh, that is wonderful. Did that come through in your session?
Oh, yes, yes. We had that's where you are. And that was a message that I had was you're a leader, but that's just what it is. There's no emotional connection to that. There's no how in humans we look up to leaders or whatever. It's just like I have five fingers on one hand and five fingers on the other.
Right. So commonplace. I mean, yes, spirit tells people this all the time. It's like, yes, you have spiritual gifts, but you're not special. That doesn't make you any more or any less than anybody else. We all
Yeah.
have these spiritual gifts. You're a natural healer, but that does not make you any more special than anybody else. Right. They're quick to inform us of this because we do tend to think, oh my gosh, then I'm different. Well, we're not really that different anyway, but people would think I'm different. I'm special. I'm better than anybody else. No, that is not true. That is not true.
It's not. And you're not any less from where you are. I know a lot of people feel that way. They feel like, oh, I'm not as good as this person, or I don't have that gift, or whatever. It's just not. You just are. It's just like air. Yeah. And everything out there is yours for the taking and the using. Does that make sense? You have as right to that energy over there as much as any other being. You can use that to heal if you want. That's something that you have. You don't have to ask for it or say please or go through any tricks. You just say, universe, I think this person needs love. Let's send them some love. And the universe will send them some love. And the universe shows me what kind of energy to send to somebody. And I'll say, oh, they're sad. And the universe, I'll see a color and the universe says, we just send it and it helps or does whatever it's supposed to do. And I think that as humans, we think there's a scarcity of stuff and we have limited resources. And that's not true. That's not true. We have access to the universe. We have access to everything. And it's our right as a being to access that. And we don't have to jump through hoops, like I said. We don't have to beg. We don't have to command. We don't have to do any of that stuff. We just say, oh, I'd like that. And it's yours.
So true. Now let's get to the part of your session where you were some sort of other being.
She took me through we did some energy looking around, and I ended up being in between worlds. And you're going to think this is strange, but we were bubbles. Like if you look in a dishpan with bubbles, that's what it was. We were all touching, we were all bubbles, and we were all around. And I could recognize that bubble over there, and I could recognize that bubble over there. And then at one point, we all went down. We all went through a hole. We all went through a path. It happened to be red, and I don't know why it was red, because I thought, oh, red, I'm being born. Well, that wasn't it. I was going through my friends, my comrades, a bunch of us went down, and I remember landing on, and you know how your knees bend when you land, when you jump, you land. And I remember that feeling, and I knew I was not seen by anybody else, but I had huge wings, and I was a man in this particular incarnation that I had. And it was my job. And I don't mean a job like you have to go and pave the roads or you have to be a cashier. It wasn't like that. In this particular case, it was my task or my job that I would go around and I would help the higher self decide or control the exit point that was decided upon. So each of us has an exit point, and the higher self knows what it is. So it was my job to go from being to being and communicate. There was like a predetermined meetup. I'd go and I'd say, I remember whispering to this woman because she was standing on a curb and she was on a street. There were cars coming by and there was a car coming. And I just whispered and said, look at that over there. And it stopped her. And she didn't step off the curb because her higher self had said it's not her exit point. I don't know how, I can't tell you how many, but we have multiple exit points where we can pass on, where we can transition. It was my job to help that person not jump off when they weren't supposed to. It's hard to explain. One of the things that I remember was talking to the higher self, and my communication wasn't talking, it was communicating telepathically and said, yeah, this is the point we talked about. This is what we need to do. Go ahead and do it. And I had no fear of failing. It was my job. I never failed. I was very good at the job. I was able to go in and make sure that that didn't happen. There was also a sense of there was another force or another something that made those things happen. They presented those points. It wasn't evil. It wasn't something like that, but they presented that opportunity for that person to check out or make that exit point. It was all connected. It was all known. Everything was, I would almost say, I knew everything. The higher self knew everything. And we all knew at that point that that person had more to do. That person had something that they were going to do. They were either going to affect somebody else or they were going to do something. And it could be little. It could be huge. I didn't know what that was, but I think I did know what it was, but I couldn't tell you what it was with this particular case. So she said like, oh, did I just hear something? Well, she knew something had happened. This woman that might have stepped off the curb knew something had happened, but didn't know what it was. Did I just hear something? You know, she understood something had happened, but it was fleeting for her, and that was it. And then I moved on to the next person. It was a boat. It was very cold. The guy was dressed in a winter hat and the ocean stuff. He was like a fisherman, and it was very wavy there. And I knew that there was a wave that could come and sweep him off the ship. It would knock him off. And my job was to make sure that didn't happen. And what I did was I leaned on the other side to make sure the boat didn't tip him off, because I knew all about physics. I knew how to do everything. I knew what had to be done. And I was like, okay, done. Bye. You know, I'm moving on. It was just like going one to the other, to the other, to the other. And there was no emotional thing to it. I wasn't yay, I wasn't sad, I wasn't bored. It was just going through, and that was what I had to do. And that was in that particular lifetime, that's what I did.
Oh, I am just getting so much energy around this right now because this comes up for me all the time, not just in QHHT, but in my mediumship work, my work with angels that, we all know we have these exit points. We can either take them or not. And it's so fascinating to hear it from the other side, right?
It is. It is. There was an affirmation to it. I knew that we had choices, and I knew there was a plan. I knew I'm not a religious person. I'm not. But I knew that when I was there, I knew that it was all planned, and it's hard to explain. It was all for a reason. It was all, nothing seemed to be left up to chance. It was all really very clear what I had to do, what they had to do, and then going forward, that kind of thing.
Now, when somebody is in grief, that's kind of difficult to hear that there was a plan, everything went according to plan. Then again, I also think that that gives a certain amount of comfort to many people that there was
I
a
agree. Yeah.
to my loved one. There is a purpose to my life. There's a purpose to everyone's life. We have things that we need to accomplish. And if we've already accomplished them and it's our time for whatever reason, there's something bigger at play that's watching out for us. I'm not religious either. I'm very spiritual, but not like Christian.
Right.
Yeah.
The same. But our higher self knows that. And we have to trust our higher self. We have to trust what we hear, what we know to be true. And if I died tomorrow, I would want my children to understand that was my choice. That's what I decided when I came into this life. And that's how it is. And it isn't a tragedy. You're here to experience love. And that's what we have. And that's what I hope I'm doing. You know what I mean? And that's what it's all about to me. And the grief we have is about love.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's really grief for us, but maybe we might have joy for our loved one.
Yes.
Something that strikes me is the teamwork aspect of it, is that it's almost like a ballet or a dance. Like, okay, here comes the car. Here's the lady. Is it her time? No, not yet. I'm just going to come in and do my job without a word, just,
Right.
just flowing.
It's like a well-written script. I mean, everything is so planned. So Violetta took me through, she says, okay, let's move on from that life. And you're at the very end of that, I say assignment, but you're at the very end of that. What happens? And I said, oh, we just go back to the bubbles. We just go back I transitioned from what I was, which was a winged man being, and I just dissolved and became a white bubble. And she says, how do you decide? Do you have to agree? Are you forced to go to be a human? Because I said, my next thing is to be a human. And she says, how does that feel? Are you assigned that? Do you have a choice? And I said, to me, it was like, you know how you do when you're planting and you're doing gardens and you have crops, you make sure that you don't deplete that energy in that soil. So in this particular case, being a human is hard. So my next incarnation was not a human. It was to regenerate my energy and regenerate that feeling and become this helper angel. So it was like we were trading off. We were having winter crops. You plant carrots, but you don't plant corn in the same place next year, that kind of thing. You know what I mean? It was all a plan of this is where you are now, and then you're going to regenerate, and then you're going to go back down. And you're going to do that next, and you're going to do that next. And it was all a plan. And I wasn't forced to do anything. And I completely understood. And I was not alone. I was never alone. And that was the huge lesson for me. I was never alone. You never are. And I think if you ever feel alone, I mean, that's tough. That's tough. But I'd like the lesson to be that you're not alone. There's incredible help for you. The angels are there to help you. Your guides are there to help you. If you have a council of people sitting at the table in front of you, we're all in this together and you're never alone.
You're never alone. Honestly, I feel like I'm on a mission of world domination to make everybody understand that.
Yes. Yes.
It's a cast of thousands around us all the time. So you described yourself as being this male with wings.
Mhm.
What else? How else did you look?
It's hard to explain, but I only saw my face. I was very handsome. I was very muscular. I don't know why, but in my humanness, I felt like I was muscular. And that could be because of imagery you get as a human when you're growing up and stuff. That's what I felt like. I had some other pieces where I had another life where I was just bright light. And that's what I was. I was a bright light being, and I was a daughter. And my father, he was proud of me for the part that I was playing. And I realized he had a really big job. And it was very eye-opening where we play so many parts and we have an integration and we're all one. When I ascended in that session, I looked down and I could see pillars of light from other light workers. I knew that they were light workers and they were different colors and they were different strengths. And I was pink for whatever that, I felt that that was the love. And I saw a lot of green and orange and blues, but I didn't see a lot of pinks. But the higher I got, I could see more around the world and I was pink. And I saw a few whites and they were just pillars of light going from the earth all the way up, all the way up. And that gave me a insight into the world and the universe. And those are the light workers. And they're not a lot right now, but they are growing in number.
Sounds kind of like you were Archangel Michael or somebody like Archangel Michael. I think there's only one, but also just a very particular type of being. And, so many of us could be human, we can be light, we can be bubbles, we can be all kinds of things. I've seen everything in a QHHT session, but being who switches back and forth so easily, I think is really pretty fascinating and very interesting. So, what was your biggest takeaway from all of this?
The lesson I had was you are not alone. And I literally had felt that I was alone. I felt that in this body, in this human bunch of cells that I am, I felt alone. And the lesson was that you are not. You don't go through life alone. You don't go through death alone. You don't go through afterlife alone. None of that time are you alone. The other piece was love. It's all about love.
It's always all about love. I think the Beatles had it right. Love is all there is.
Yes.
Literally, that comes up in so many sessions. I wish we would finally get that. I mean, of course, that is what Jesus taught was love. And we're still not understanding it. We're still not practicing it.
I know. I know. And that's why it's important for the light workers you don't have to do anything if you believe it's love and you practice love and you feel love. You walk in a grocery store and you're spreading it. You know what I mean? You don't have to preach it. You don't have to do any of that. You just emit it, and that helps.
Yeah, it really helps. And now, how do you think your life has changed from that experience?
I remember listening to, because my session was recorded, and I remember listening to that session afterwards, and I felt so sad. And it took me a while to figure out why I felt sad, because while I was in that session, I understood everything. My higher self knew when I got back and I was listening to the session, and I didn't have that same feeling. I felt like I'd lost that feeling. And I was so sad. I felt a sense of loss. And I'm like, Violetta, why do I feel that way? And she says, well, some people feel sad. And afterwards, I let some more time pass and I listened to the session again. And I thought, oh, I got that feeling back and I got that sensation back that was the message. But it was all about remembering what you've forgotten when you were between worlds. Remembering that and understanding that when I listened to it after some time, I got it and I understood. And I am glad that I waited a little bit longer.
A little bit longer to listen to it again?
Yes, yes. Because it was the sense of loss. I was grieving that feeling and that being in those lifetimes and understanding how all it was. I was one with the universe. I felt that. And then when I got back at my desk and I am listening to it and I don't feel that anymore. I've lost that. But let some more time pass and I feel like that again. I'm like, oh, I remember that feeling. And that was a feeling that filled me up again.
The feeling that you're talking about, many people felt after seeing the movie Avatar for the first time, the first Avatar.
Yes. Yes.
You felt that too?
Yes. 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 I mean, yes, the tree roots, they were communicating with each other. Yes, that's what they do. It was amazing. Yes.
Right. There was even a name for it, the post-Avatar syndrome.
I didn't know that. That's interesting.
Interesting. Because so many people were like, that's how it's supposed to be. And why isn't it like that? I remember it being like that. Why isn't it like that anymore?
Yes.
Oh, there is that. And also I wanted to mention that, in a QHHT session, this is an in-depth session. I mean, the whole thing lasts maybe 6 hours or so. I've got 9 hours before. The hypnosis itself is about 2, maybe sometimes longer. There's no way you're going to remember everything because Well, A, you're not fully present. I mean, many of us are aware of what's going on during the session, but we're so in it that we're in it moment by moment, if we're in it at all, if we're aware at all. But the second thing is just like a dream, we can have the most vivid, intense dream, but if it's like lasting 2 hours, there's no way you're going to remember everything when you're out of
Right.
it. That dream state tends to wear off after a while. So we always record this session, and it's so important to listen to that afterward because one, you're not going to remember everything. So you're going to remember more by listening to it. And two, you get more out of it. You're back in that energy when you listen to it. So it's like being back there, but in a different way.
Yes. Yes. And I would recommend that to someone if they feel sad afterwards. I felt like I'd done something wrong and I didn't. I thought I'm sad because I did something wrong, but listening to it afterwards, you can't do it wrong. You can't do it wrong. So if you feel sad, that's completely normal and just let that pass and then listen to it again and then listen to it and accept it. Be open to it.
Be open to it. That's the biggest thing, right? Now, some people come out of the session and they feel like they made it all up. What would you say to that?
Yeah, that was part of it. That was when I listened to it, I'm like, well, where did that come from? Did I manifest? Did I say that because I want to feel a certain way? And that's not true. That really isn't true. It takes a while for us to trust the messages that we get. This was a message I needed to get, but I had to live just a little bit more before I fully understood that what I got was genuine. It wasn't me making stories up. It wasn't, because I felt a little bit more trusting in what I hear and what I see and what I believe. Because as children, we come into this world knowing what, remembering that. And then you're taught to understand the physical world. If you could fall down those steps, these are things we have to understand. That's a hot stove. Don't touch that. Don't run with scissors. We're taught all of that and all that kind of thing, all that physical learning that keeps us safe in this dimension makes us forget what it was to be a bubble. You know what I mean? To be one, a part of the universe, to feel that joy, to feel that understanding that everything is known and everything is okay and everything is peace and everything is love. And we're taught to understand the third dimension so we don't hurt ourselves and we forget. So I was afraid as a child, and I had a friend who helped me at 50, helped me understand, to open myself back up. And if I had, my understanding of the world was that there are things out there. I know there's something over there. I know there is, but my parents would say, no, there's not, go back to sleep, and I would be afraid. I knew all of that. And then one day I said, stop. And then they backed up, but they were still there. I knew they were still there because I was a very lucky person. Things worked out for me. You know what I mean? Things worked out for me because I somehow made choices that I had an intuitive sense that were the right ones because my guides were helping me. My angels were there for me. So I would encourage people to listen and to pay attention and on the nuances, the things that come up and the things, if you keep seeing the color yellow, why am I seeing yellow? Why is the number 23 going through my head? Why am I counting to 23? Why is 23 over there? There's a reason for that. And you just relax and let it and say, what are you trying to tell me? And those are the kinds of things we have to listen to and understand.
I love that. I love this story. This is so many confirmations here. It's amazing. Thank you so much for joining me today. I know the scheduling was a little wonky, but I think this episode is actually, in your story, is going to help a lot of people. People who are feeling a little bit lost, people who are feeling alone, people who don't know what their purpose is or what they're even doing here or what life is even about. I think this is going to help. And I would encourage everybody to have a QHHT session because I do feel like QHHT puts us in touch with who we really are, that greater part of ourselves, and the love. My God, the love. So if anybody is looking for a QHHT practitioner, yes, there is a QHHT practitioner near you. Go to QHHTofficial.com and click on find a practitioner, find someone near you, someone that you like and trust. You get a good vibe. So he must have had a good vibe with Violetta.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Beautiful, beautiful soul. Beautiful. She's gentle. Loved her. Yes.
Lovely, lovely, lovely. So, Tracy, thank you so much for joining me today. I think this is going to be book worthy in the future. So, do you have
I'm
any
glad I could help.
Oh, wonderful. If you have any further stories, I would love to hear them. But thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. Please subscribe and follow, and be sure to share this episode. The more people who know about this podcast, the more great story submissions we get. Have a story to share? Email your own real-life angel encounter to angelencounterspodcast@gmail.com or visit radiatewellnesscommunity.com/real-life angel encounters podcast. Or join our Facebook group and continue the discussion. Want to know what your angels and loved ones have to tell you? Schedule an appointment with me at radiatewellnesscommunity.com. A special thanks to James Wheeler for the original music and to Tiffany Baumgarten for the logo design.